welcome.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
Always start with some music. This is called City Life.
City life.
City Life. Um, so welcome everyone to Stillness in Chaos. This is season 3, saison 3. We've I've got Romana Shaikh, the author of Weaving Wholeness, with me. I've got Po, who's my companion, who I can squeeze, and I thought who can squeeze, who I can cuddle, and I thought it'd be a good companion for the show. And for those who don't know me, I'm Daniel. I'm the founder of Stillness in Chaos Consulting, and we started Because You with Romana a few years ago. I truly believe that all of us are wise, creative, joyful human beings. And sometimes a mental health issue, grief, emotional distress, whatever it is, really clouds who we are as human beings. So it's my life's purpose to kind of firstly go on that journey myself, see who I am as this human being, kind of figure it out, but also kind of support others to see themselves for who they are, this incredible person that they are. Stillness and Chaos is one of the ways that I do it. Every few weeks, I speak to incredible people like Romana. We have conversations about different things, but something that's kind of close to their heart and relevant. And it's really at the intersection of well-being and inner leadership. Because when you kind of go on this journey, there's an amazing growth opportunity, and it's beautiful, and it kind of raises our consciousness. So we kind of try and do lots of things today. And it's amazing to have you, Romana. For those who are here, you can share comments, put in reflections, ask us questions. Otherwise, Romana will just keep speaking to each other, which is fun, but it'll also be nice to include other voices in the room. So please feel free to share. This is a Funky Doodle streaming platform, so your comment will come up on the screen at some point. So please do that. So today we're going to be talking about reclaiming our humanness. We're going to use Romana's new book as the canvas for that. So I'm looking forward to that. And finally, those who are watching on YouTube later, as well as LinkedIn, because everyone's not free at this time, welcome again to Stillness in Chaos. Romana, welcome. Anything you'd like to say before I do a fantastic intro to you?
Just welcome, salam, namaste, and thank you for having me here again, Danny.
Awesome. So, I mean, from a professional space, which is fine, but we can quickly get over that, is you've been in the ed space now as an educator. In the education space for over 15 years. You're a presence-based psychotherapist who work deeply with people on healing, and you've gone through your own journey with that. You're now an author of this amazing book that's coming out soon. Those who are here, you'll see a QR code. So at some point, if you like what Romana is saying, order it. I highly recommend it. And you're a systems thinker, right? Because you're kind of interweaving all these different things. So there are lots of identities from a professional angle that you have. But if I think of you in a phrase, for me, I think you really push the boundaries, right? Whether it's for yourself, your own growth, your own journey, or the way you look at mental health, your own thriving as a person, but also for others. Just the way you're looking at education, really pushing the limits on what the whole education is for children, and making pretty courageous stands on it. But also with the people that you are with, right, and love. So I know you always said, "How are you, Danny? How are you feeling? What are you feeling in your body?" And I was like, "I don't know, Romana. I really don't know." And you kept doing it to me, and 2 years later, I feel that's the biggest skill that I have right now. Which is
and you asked me exactly that question before we started, so I'd say you figured it out.
I'm on the journey, and that's the most beautiful skill of understanding the body and the mind. So welcome, Miss Romana, who pushes the boundaries all the time.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'd love to perhaps start with, you know, maybe zoom out a little bit and share, um, about the book, right? Where we're talking about weaving wholeness. I think there are multiple things. It feels like this is your life's work, kind of encapsulated in your first book. And there's one, paragraph especially which really stood out to me, right? And um, I'll read it out, and people who are here can read it. Wisdom traditions have long held the view that human beings and all other living beings are born of something larger. Wholeness, understood as this unconditioned state of being, the natural state of mind, is our undivided sense of self. We are reflections of the universe, complete with beauty, grace, wisdom, love, and peace. That's so beautiful. Um, so perhaps, Romana, maybe just start as, if you could just use that as a canvas, kind of say, what led you to embrace and embody this concept of wholeness, and maybe paint a picture for us.
Thank you. Um, yeah, I think just that quote that you read itself, I think for me is going to be sort of my life's inquiry and exploration, and I feel like where I am now has been recognizing that, hey, there is this state of wholeness where I can really feel whole. I can thrive. I can be in joy and grief, both at the same time. And if I had to answer like what got me there, I think it was really searching for a response, a way to cope with the persistent and repeating challenges I had with my health, both physical and mental. And we've talked about this in so many ways. I feel like so much of my mental health has so many different aspects to it, and at the heart of it, I think when I was trying to cope with it by constantly trying to get better, uh, and it was constantly, okay, how do I improve this part of me? How do I like solve this problem? Or I'm and how do I like get better at this? So whether it was being really good at work, and using that as a way to cope and just gaining a lot of achievement and a sense of self-worth from there, or it was trying to cope with shame and with anger that I've had in my body for so long. Um, and I've been doing this for so long. I started working as a child. I've been working since I was 15. So work and trying to prove who I am, trying to show up in the world in a certain way, those used to be ways I thought, this is how I'll arrive. This is how I will be someone. But I just kept crashing, and it was just constant navigation of depression, anxiety, what later I got other names for. And then when I finally sort of learned about presence orientation and had this lovely opportunity to train at Just Being as a psychotherapist, this whole other world of wisdom traditions opened up.
Mm.
And that idea just began to melt away of, I don't have to try to fix something about myself, because those are all the fragmented ways of seeing ourselves as a student, as a educator, as all of those identities that you listed, which kind of I think of them now as coats we wear or dupattas or armors, but they really then become shields. They stop us from seeing that deep sense of self, which is that unconditioned state. Like beneath all of this is where you find that, oh, there's this really quiet, gentle, and loud and powerful space inside me, and that's whole. That's the place I can connect with land from. That's the place I can connect with a larger life force from. And that's the place I can stop thinking of myself as broken, because I'm not. So it was like a big flip, really starting with just me seeing myself differently. And it was very liberating to discover that, oh, I'm not broken, and this is cool. I can be happy in spite of and through everything that life keeps throwing at me.
Mm. I mean, so much of what you said resonates. I've had a similar, maybe intense, almost intense journey with mental health over the last 10 years. And I feel very similar to you. I've kind of tried to fix myself and, do all these different things and try out, because, that's how I wanted to, prove to myself and the world that I am okay, I'm fine. And I love the self-worth thing, right? I think that's kind of ingrained in us as we grew up. And it was only last year where I could, like, for me, even I felt the sense of, what, I am whole in my brokenness, right? This is one part of me, and I also have multiple parts of me that are, amazing and interesting, and which I love. And this part of me, whether you want to call it a mental health something, is actually there is opportunity. There's so much that unlocks, because you can
Yeah.
work with that in some ways. So I love that wholeness, self-worth, and those parts of you kind of being almost your army, and looking to be with you in a way. And I love the polarities that you talked about: the joy and grief, and the anger and sadness, and whatever it is. And we all face that every single day.
Yeah, and we really are that expansive. And you mentioned how we grow up with so much of this, and we still do that. Like school and education is almost every day telling children to improve. One of the most common questions we ask kids is, what do you want to do when you grow up?
Mm.
So it's telling them they have to do something, and it's telling them that they have not arrived till they've grown up. And so it's constantly like giving children that message that I'm not really caring about who you are today, and how you are today. How are you feeling? Who are you on the inside? But all we're focused on is, are you growing to fit into sort of this world, and fit into that mold of success or achievement or whatever. um, and so even in education, I feel like that's sort of the same pattern you can see, and all of us will have a story of that, something that happened in school that made us feel like we had to improve or fix or hide something about ourselves to fit in.
Mm. Let's go to the child, right? Because I feel this is so central. All of us as children had a lot of stuff going on, and I love what you said about the what are you going to do rather than be, and not focusing on the future. Because you worked with children across India, Africa, Armenia, multiple places of conflict. Um, what like what have you? What's the way? How has this impact, like, really, how is this way of thinking, how is this the education system, what are these deeper systemic injustices, really, what are they doing to our kids?
The big question. Um, I, I've been thinking a lot about this notion of uh, self worth, improvement, achievement, and if you really like keep peeling it back, how
Mm,
it ties into a lot of what we've just inherited through colonial pasts, through histories and presents that are shaped for a certain kind of society, right? A society that is built on economics, on money. So there's a certain notion that our education system is geared towards, that success means grow up, get a stable job, get rich, buy a car, buy a house,
yeah.
sort of consume.
Yeah.
It's built on that paradigm of consumption and achievement.
Mm,
And so those two ideas of consumption and achievement, if you look at school and what happens on a daily basis in school, you'll begin to see those in just how we've designed school. So every time a child comes to school and spends time in school, their entire day, what we call learning, is about consuming knowledge.
Mm.
So we're teaching them that this is what success means. This is history. This is what happened in history. We're not teaching them to create knowledge. And now, if you think about children who are coming from really diverse backgrounds, and all of the knowledge that exists in their homes, in their families, we disregard all of that. So when I've gone to uh, whether it's Ghana or Sierra Leone or Armenia or India, children are literally learning the exact same thing everywhere.
Mm.
Uh, and that's really problematic when you think about all of the knowledge, wisdom, history, and culture that each of these lands has of their own. And if you spend enough time with children outside of school, and you ask them, okay, how do you spend your day? Like children who grow up in farming families will tell you hours of their day are spent in very methodical, very highly technical work. And then they come to school, and we literally make all of that irrelevant
Mm.
by giving them a standardized kind of education. Um, so we just expect them to consume a certain kind of knowledge, and whatever they do bring in is disregarded. So
Mm.
again, tying it back to that idea of self-worth, we're invalidating children's inherent wisdom. We're invalidating culture. We're invalidating any kind of knowledge that sits outside of written language and mathematics, and most often English language. Uh, and to me, that pattern is one that we can see in the day to day,
Mm.
but often we don't really step back to recognize it as, hey, this is how colonialism is still present in our life today.
Mm.
This is how this big system of capitalism is being perpetuated in the way we are messaging, conditioning our children, in the way children are oriented towards achievement and collecting marks in class, and then it becomes collecting money and goods as they grow up. And that's really what I've tried to explore in the book. Can we begin to see it in the day to day?
Mm.
Because it's in the day to day that we can recognize and take ownership of shifting things.
Mm. Yeah, and yeah, I love the zoomed out version, right? Because you don't really think about that on a day to day basis. And what you've kind of done is you've zoomed out into kind of these underlying one at a systemic level, the colonialism, the capitalism, the way we are looking at self worth, all that stuff. Um, and like what I also love is you've beautifully, when you talk about whole child education, which has actually been around for some time, right? But you've added layers from your own experience with mental health, well-being, trauma, that into the book, into education. So just share a little bit about your trauma lens, your mental health lens, your well-being lens into some of this stuff, and related to how children can thrive, right? So we're talking about the problems, yeah, but
Yeah.
talk about maybe a little bit of the challenge of the trauma and the well-being, and then move into your submission to the world.
Yeah. So in the why trauma, I think I over the years of going in and out of so many different classrooms, um, at one point I got really frustrated and began to feel really helpless,
Mm.
that I can't understand what is going on here. I would go to the same classroom repeatedly, on the same schools. You'd see the children like move through that ladder, um, but you'd also begin to see the patterns of there are some children that are not learning, they're not achieving. And I put all of that in quotes now because I think all of that is what we need to question. And so it started with that inquiry, saying what is actually happening here, and how can I understand this differently. So the study of trauma for me was a way to understand what do children who are growing up in poverty, who are experiencing adversity that comes from poverty. So whether that's malnourishment, whether that's uh, unsafe housing, whether that's exposure to violence and abuse, uh, and then you add to that the relationship between communities that are growing up in poverty and the identities they carry of marginalization and oppression. So, be it in our country where a high number of the population in poverty do carry identities of being Muslim, of being Dalit, of coming from tribal backgrounds, and our policies have frameworks and have recommendations for them, but there is a different kind of trauma that comes from this experience of systemic oppression. And that's one thing that I'm trying to discern between in the book. There is personal trauma that many of us, maybe all of us, in some degree go through in our life. And then there is the generational sort of oppression that certain communities, certain families that hold identities that are marginalized and oppressed continue to experience. So I'll give you an example of the first time I visited Ghana, and I was coming out of a school, and I saw on a poster um, a rule about girls have to come to school with their heads shaved or they'll be sent back home. Um, and I didn't understand it. It's my first time there. I don't know what this is about, and so I asked a colleague to explain that to me and what that was about. And so it's part of a school rule there for all girls to have their heads shaved. And so just imagine that you have older women telling young girls that you have to shave your head, otherwise, your curly hair looks unruly.
Right.
And so that's a systemic rule that is passed down, and we would pass it off as a dress code. We would pass it off and normalize it as, oh, this is what well behaved, well dressed looks like. Um, and so it's generational. And this is one example of that, but we can see generational patterns that then get carried forward, and that becomes oppressive when we begin to perpetuate norms that are not helpful or further harmful. So then when we see children in school uh, acting out in certain ways, when they're really trying to communicate something to us, and our response then becomes again to put them into a box. So if a child has not eaten all day and then they come to school, there is no provision for a school meal, and the only thing we care about as educators is whether they're paying attention and whether they've done their homework. We're not able to recognize that this child who's probably falling asleep in class, or dissociating, uh, or too weak to pay attention, we're not able to take that into what this child needs. So we disregard the wholeness of the child, and we are unable to recognize that some of the ways children show up, the way they ask for help, the way they're trying to claim their own power in class, they're not misbehaviors. They are children communicating needs to us, and they are often responses to trauma. And that's really the lens of whole child that I'm trying to offer here, saying wholeness, first of all,
Hmm.
is about recognizing who's the child today, what is everything this child is bringing as their living experiences into school, and what can I know about the history, about the culture, and where may have there been or continue to be oppression that is being carried through. So, really beginning to expand that idea of wholeness to
Hmm.
being larger than life,
Hmm.
being beyond this individual body, to being everything that we and our families and our communities hold. And then we see trauma as these experiences that live in us, the experiences that shrink us, the experiences that are ways we're really asking to be held and to be seen by another person.
What just happened? You had like some
No, did you give me fireworks for that?
maybe some AI. You said some word. It's like AI. They're just like rewarding you for all your wisdom. Uh, right. Um, yeah. What's? I mean, sorry. Go on. Is there anything
Oh,
else? Yeah.
no.
So there are so many layers to that. Like what's staying with me is the personal and the systemic. And an educator, and perhaps all of us, right? Seeing children, maybe in our own lives it might be lesser, but there's something about seeing the child as a whole. Um, and part of me almost is like, okay, that's a lot, right? For especially an educator in some of these classrooms that you kind of work in, it's a lot to take in. Like, systemic oppression, I get it. Now, trauma, even if I understand it, like,
Yeah.
um, like how do I don't want to go to solution mode, but kind of is there too much pressure on the educator? Is the first question that's coming to mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that question. So what is the invitation here? The invitation to all of us is can we recognize that each of us is inherently whole.
Hmm.
So for a teacher, uh, even when we work with teachers, when we conduct trainings for teachers,
Hmm.
even in that relationship, right, how do we hold that space with teachers, not in a way that's constantly telling teachers that, hey, you have to improve, you're not doing a good job. But in that relationship as well, how do we recognize, hey, teachers are whole, they have their own wisdom, they have the agency within them to find their own answers. And to do that, the first sort of way to approach that is through really emphasizing this connection. So how do we first and foremost just place relationships as the most important uh, gift we can give ourselves and each other?
Beautiful.
Relationships that are coming from this place of saying, hey, I see you in your wholeness, I come to you in my wholeness. So that is the ask for an educator. When you go into school and you work with children, before you decide that this one's not good at math, that one's going to not complete their homework, that one does not pay attention in class, that one is a misbehaving child. Before all of that, can you begin to see children as whole? And can you begin to build a relationship where you get to know who that child is? That's really the ask. You're not asking teachers to be therapists.
Yeah. Yeah. And that I see you in your wholeness, and I come in all my wholeness.
Yeah.
Just by that, like that is really powerful, right? Because then it kind of, removes the paralysis of all the stuff that whether it's educator, whoever it is to deal with, and it kind of goes back to that agency that you're talking about, right? It kind of I know one of the big themes of your book, and maybe we can kind of segue into that because it's natural, is this, seeing ourselves in our wholeness is one of the ways to kind of reclaim our power, right? Whether it's, yeah, just the way we are, the way of being, our relationships, which you said are the most important gift that we can give others. Would you like to share a little bit about, in your book, especially this theme of reclaiming our power? Because there's so many layers to it. I'd love to kind of dive deep, a little bit deeper.
Yeah. I think you've touched into it already with that um, recognizing power as something that is our comes from inside, that
Mhm.
comes from our wholeness. um, and for me, that's been my exploration with power. So as we grow up, if I'm tying the threads of what we've talked about, we keep getting told that we get power from the outside, and we get power when we do XYZ, when we achieve ABC. And often then it gets related to a status in society or a position. And so that's what we keep striving towards. And then we get sort of trapped in that,
Mhm.
mm, that I can only get power from the outside. So the exploration is, no, can I find out within me what is it that really anchors me and gives me my power? Um, but we can't talk about power without also acknowledging that uh, there is a very real experience of being oppressed. And so I'm not trying to say we find our power from the inside and that goes away.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, but the
yeah.
invitation is for us to see when we find our own power, can we discern it between these two, and then what do we choose to do with it?
Mm.
For example, I've been reflecting a lot on how have I used my power, and when have I not. Uh, and I was thinking about this time when uh, I I had this interaction with a person, and I told them that the way they had dressed, they had come to a professional, again I'll do the air quotes, they had come to work with their hair colored
Mm.
a beautiful bright blue, and I was in a leadership position, and I had this conversation with them about how that was unprofessional, uh,
Mm.
and not okay to show up that way. And so they would have to sort of not be so visible. And I asked them to make a choice of going to shift the role they had for that day,
Right.
so that they're not visible. um, and at that time there was a part of me that did believe that believed and had adopted this idea, right? This colonial notion of what does professionalism look like.
Mm.
And so I had adopted that belief system. And so I had positional power, but my own mindset, my own notions of professionalism, and then through that, this decision I made to tell this person uh, was an act of me perpetuating an oppression.
Mm.
So again, it's in this daily leadership act that we can perpetuate or we can dismantle.
Mm.
And when I reflected on that conversation, I perpetuated it. But I remember also feeling inside me that, hey, but this is the rule. I can't do anything about it.
Right.
And so I also sort of convinced myself both ways, saying, uh, yeah, that is professional. And what will you do about it? You gotta like maintain this thing, and people, other, like,
Yeah.
then I recognize that, oh, I'm also like hiding in my own powerlessness. There is this place inside me that is feeling powerless, because I know what all I have done to achieve this position I have, and I'm not ready to take that risk. Because saying something to shift this
Yeah.
notion of professionalism would have required me to step into what I'm saying is true power.
Hmm.
So if I truly found a place inside me that questioned this belief system, that
Yeah.
really interrogated it, like, hey, who made up this rule? Who is it serving? And
Hmm.
who is it oppressing?
Hmm.
And if I acknowledge to myself that I am not going to uphold an oppressive system,
Hmm.
how do I find that value or that anchor in me
Yeah.
to make that choice and step into that power?
Yeah.
So then I use my positional power to dismantle.
Yeah. I was just coming to that. I feel because these day to day, there are so many pulling forces, tensions, the power dynamics, and the whole, the systemic structures that are there, which show up in everyday life. The anchor is what helps, right? That's what you said. What are our anchors, and you need to do that. So if I don't, put that to you, what are your anchors, given that you've got all of these things happening every single day? What are a couple of your anchors?
For me, I think it's only because I wrote the book I figured it out. Because I
It's figured it out. My work is done. Okay.
and no, and now the work starts. Now that I've named them, now I'm more conscious of them. So now is the practice of letting the anchor be an anchor, because I'm not at all claiming that this is easy.
Yeah.
uh, but what I'm experiencing uh, is that this is uncomfortable.
Hmm.
It's hard because it makes you confront. So for me, an anchor is really this idea of truth, and honoring the truth of different people's lived experience, knowing that I don't know them all. Um, and under that, like, what makes me do that? It's love and justice. Uh,
Mm.
and finding those two, and this is an exploration I will continue to be on, like, really, how do these two go together? Because we can love people,
Mm.
but it's justice, in my experience, that makes us act from that love,
Mm.
makes us almost channel our anger at oppression. It makes us hold that anchor of power and say, okay, I'm going to direct my power, I'm going to exercise my power. And love sort of knocks at your heart to say, hey, did this person's life story, did you let it reach in?
Mm.
Did you really receive it?
Mm.
And those two I've been exploring, to see how do they fit inside me, and what do I do and say differently
Mm.
when I choose to reflect on everyday leadership choices from
Mm.
this place of, is this is this an expression of love, and is this an expression of justice, and is that going together?
Yeah. And I mean, what's sitting with me is also when you do that exploration, it's you've got to really tap into, you have to connect to yourself at so many different levels, right? And I mean, you've written this beautifully in many of your articles where you say the crisis that we are in, the mental health crisis, the way that we are in is there's a lot of, because there's a lot of disconnection to self, to others, to the world. And this fits kind of, I mean, if you need to do this work, you need to be connected to yourself. You need to know what, to yourself, to others, and to the world. So that's kind of coming up for me as you
Yeah.
were speaking.
Yeah, and in many ways that was another parallel sort of experience. That the first article we wrote was when we started talking about this with each other, right? And um, that's another thing that I feel like I didn't anticipate when I stepped into this global work, that in my bubble of being this living in this urban little dream crazy city that we live in, Danny, you and I, there's so much of the world that we're just protected from. We have a lot of privilege living this urban lifestyle that we do. And the moment I started traveling and meeting children and people in other parts of our own country and in other parts of the world,
Mm.
um, there was so much life and context that sort of like came at me. Uh, and then because I make friends everywhere,
Mm.
it sort of all becomes personal. Uh, and I found that beautiful, uh, and also really overwhelming,
Mm.
because then you can't scroll past a piece of news anymore. Every piece of news like shakes you up differently. So when war breaks out in Armenia, uh, it scares me, because I'm so deeply connected now, uh,
Mm.
to friends, to communities, to children over there. When genocide continues and continues and continues in many places across the world, you can now you have stories about that land, about those people. They're not those people,
Yeah.
they're friends.
Yeah.
And that's really why I so deeply believe that that connection, the human to human connection with each other, the connection to land and just valuing our lands around the world, that's what keeps us awake.
Mm.
And then grief comes. I know I've spent days in grief and helplessness and despair, and feeling like, oh, I just, what do I do?
Mm.
Like a world crisis. Well, I'm just one person. What do I do about it?
Mm.
And it will come, and that is our way of coping with that, right? Is why we become numb.
Mm.
Our way of coping with that is why sometimes it becomes safer to say, hey, I can't do anything. I'm just going to live my life. I'm going to be a good person in my bubble. Uh, and sometimes we might make that choice.
And that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's okay. But can we push it, right? Can we
Thinking
can
about this. Yeah.
at least recognize that, hey, it's a bubble? Maybe even just that, that, hey, it's a bubble, and I'm choosing to be in the bubble.
Yeah.
Because then we're being honest about it.
Mm.
And I feel like the moment we do that, we start slowly preparing ourselves to
Mm.
recognize that, hey, no, it's that line we're seeing everywhere, that no one's free till everyone's free.
Mm.
And so that then becomes the almost the reason for each of us individually to find that power, because we're so in love with humanity, because we can feel the pain of another one's suffering. Everything becomes personal, and then that personal and systemic dance that you were pointing out earlier, then we'll begin to see, okay, in today, what's the choice I can make, right?
Mm.
And we come from a land of boycott movements. Our country got its independence on many forms of resistance, and so it's there. There are many ways for us to be in solidarity, to act from a place of power, but really act for a shared dream of for humanity, for collective liberation, as I explore in the book. That's can we anchor in that?
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, so many of us can resonate with this feeling of grief, powerlessness, with everything that's happening, right? Whether it's Palestine, Ukraine, parts of Africa, wherever it is, parts in our country. And if you go back to that first point of ours, in that wholeness piece of the polarities, where you can say we can hold the grief with the joy.
Yeah.
How do you see that in the day to day, both in yourself and others? And how do you find the hope in all of that, right? Because there is a lot of hope, and it's not one or the other. So can you sit with all of that, the grief, the hope, and the joy, in a way where you know are getting out of your bubble, pushing the boundaries, whatever, like you're saying. um, yeah, is this, yeah. Can I play a song for you?
Sure. Are you going to sing as well? Yes.
Say what?
You're going to sing.
Of course I am. Yeah, because I mean, when you talked about, you know, the humanity, the grief, the joy, the children, all the work that you do, I think also the reclaiming power. I feel, this song, it's called "If You Want to Sing Out, Sing Out," by Cat Stevens, who's now Yusuf Islam. He changed it, and yeah, it's just a song for you, the children, all of us. Because if you want to sing out, we should sing out. If you want to sing out, sing out. If you want to be free, be free. 'Cause there's a million ways to be. Know that there are. If you want to lay high, live high. If you want to live low, live low. 'Cause there's a million ways to go. You know that there are. You can do what you want. The opportunity's yours. You can find a new way. You can do it today. You can make it all true. You can make it undo. You see, it's easy. You don't need me to know. You wanna play that, sing out. If you wanna be free, be free. 'Cause there's a million things to be. You know that there are. So that's my longing for us and for humanity, that we can sing out when we want to sing out. Right, people who are here, if you're here, please share a comment, a reflection. How are you feeling? What's resonating? And if you have anything in your mind. How are you feeling, Romana?
Yeah, I'm feeling we should all sing.
You should just do that for the remaining. Yeah. All right. What's coming up for you? What would you like to touch upon next? Because there are so many things in your book, and people, QR code, pre-order it now before that. I keep doing plugs. But yeah, what would you like to, maybe one other theme that you'd like to share from your book that's really important for you?
I was wondering if maybe I can read a little bit from the book. How do you feel about that? Yeah?
Yeah, of course.
Ah, okay.
You were waiting for me to say this. Sorry.
Yeah, permission seeking.
Reclaim your power.
I'm working through it, Jani. Okay. So this comes in the middle of the book somewhere. The title is "The Promise of a Renewed Purpose of Education." When we commit to love and justice, we commit to a world of peace. A world where we can see each other and celebrate each other just as we are. a world where we respect and revere our lands and all that nature has to offer, a world where we serve our planet and humanity for generations to come. It is this world that education needs to prepare us to create, mindfully, intentionally, urgently, and slowly. And maybe as I read the next two lines, I would just like to invite everyone to maybe bring a child to mind, a child that you don't know, you've just seen somewhere, and really imagining that child in front of you, uh, and also bringing into your mind all the people that have come before us, our ancestors. When all beings thrive, we will know that we have an education system that has been built on love and justice, one that is reflective of the innate goodness and beauty that humanity truly is, one born from our wholeness and that serves to cultivate and nourish our wholeness, one that is created through personal movements towards love and justice that ripple across space and time to move entire systems towards love and justice.
Got a little goosebumps as you're reading.
Mm. Yeah.
What's coming up as you read that for yourself?
For me, these lines in the middle of the book um came on the other side of churning with all of that grief that we spoke about, and so for me that this is really at the heart of my invitation for us to see ourselves um, with all of our children ahead of us, the children that are here, children that are not yet here, and also children that we've lost to all of the crisis in the world, and to recognize our ancestors behind us. And then we find ourselves really in this position, right, of what feels to me as a bridge. It's a bridge between our ancestors and the generation that is to come. And so that's at the heart of my invitation. How do we rise as ancestors, um, and be a bridge to a world that we want to create, a world that comes from our true power, that comes from love and justice, and honors this beautiful planet that we all share, and all of our children.
Lovely. I want to capture that moment and pause on that because I feel what you've just asked us to do is something that needs to seep into our consciousness and we can sit with it. How do we rise as ancestors? How do we bring our wholeness to each interaction that we have? How do we see the wholeness in others? Um, how do we reclaim our power? What is our deepest longing for humanity? You've kind of encapsulated that actually very beautifully in many ways, whether it's this conversation, whether it's in your book. So thank you again for pushing the boundaries. You delivered to my introduction to you.
Thank you.
So I'm glad it was. So I'm going to pause there because I feel that's
Yeah.
like the right kind of thing to pause at. Um, is that okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless you want to, yeah.
Mm-mm. feels right.
Let's see, something's happening here.
We have some people in the chat.
Lilita.
Lita.
Hello, Lilita. Thank you for your heart. I'm sure that's. Oh, love the singing.
And Shashi Shekhar.
Shashi says, I think that's a perfect song for this discussion. Shashi, if you want to read, then read. Yes, please read the book. Buy it now. Shashi.
I should just give you this responsibility, Danny. You wherever you go, you put in these plugs for me.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Let's perhaps. Hmm. I need to ask this to all the guests who come, right? Because it's important. But when you think of the phrase stillness and chaos, what comes up for you? A phrase, an image, a feeling. What comes up for you?
Um, I'm thinking of whirling. Uh, I haven't in a while, but whenever I whirl, that's what it feels like. Uh, it, it's that dance that's happening inside and outside, and in that whirling moment, you can feel it all. So dance, I think dance is the word.
Hmm.
Is of the whirling.
Hmm. Now I'm imagining you whirling, which is beautiful. Um, I can't see it here, but I see a comment again by. Uh, Aha, I see. I don't see it here, but let me read out a couple of the other things that have come up. Florence says important to recognize the different kinds of trauma that exist in a child's life and in that of the lives of people in their lives. Thank you for that, Florence. Denise, such powerful storytelling, Romana. It really brings your thesis alive.
Mm.
Agree, plus one into 10. Great storytelling. Um, there was one more which, yeah. Lilita, maybe we should end with this. It's an appreciation. Hello, Romana and Daniel. Thank you for having this powerful and vulnerable conversation. I am resonating with this idea of being inherently whole, that we are whole in our brokenness. I truly believe this. Yet actually I struggle to practice this.
Mm.
So I'm wondering if either of you have any wholeness practices you do, or how you remind yourself of this. Oops, Lalita, I'm sorry. We should have picked this up earlier. Um, that's an incredible question.
Yes.
How any wholeness practices? Anything's coming to mind, or is this something you think we should take on the chat later on as well?
One thing it was coming up earlier for me as well was just the role that people have played for me in my life. So I guess the power of community and friends and mentors that see you in your wholeness.
Hmm.
I think above everything, just having that experience of meaningful connections with others, because there's so many times that I do feel like my brokenness takes over my day, or it's just hard, right? Like it's still hard sometimes to just get out of bed or continue to feel hopeful in the midst of all of this. And uh, but knowing that there is someone who sees me in ways that maybe I can't see me,
Hmm.
and having them around me. uh, I think our relationship has been that way, but all of the other people that my mentors who I can just call and be even broken with them, I feel like that has been a hard practice to cultivate, but I truly believe that this work and everything I've talked about in the book and we've talked about here is the work of community.
Hmm.
And that's the real wholeness practice. How do we be in wholesome, loving relationships with each other, so we don't feel like we have to do this on our own.
Yeah, and I'd like to end by just coming back to that first quote that I put up from your book, right? And it goes back to this, which says, "We are reflections of the universe,
Yeah.
complete with beauty, grace, wisdom, love, and peace." And if you just think about that, we are whole in all of these things. So thank you, dear Romana, for your gift of your time, wisdom, the fact that you're doing this work, pushing the boundaries, asking yourself these difficult questions, doing the work yourself, and then nudging the rest of us to do it, and just doing it with such grace and authenticity and love. So
Thank you.
thank you for being you, and thank you for being here. Thank you for those who have been here. God bless you if you're still here. Thank you for those who watch it later. We'll be back. I'll be back in a couple of weeks, perhaps, with another very cool leader. We're talking about different stuff, but keep following Stillness in Chaos, and I'll see you soon. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Romana, stay back.